Welcome back to You Can Homeschool. I'm Tracy Hagerman, the Happy Homeschooler, and I'm here once again with Pat Fenner from Breakthrough Homeschooling. All right, having fun here. Today, we're going to give you some tips and tricks for dealing with your child's stress. So, I'm going to start this one out, I think, this time. And the first thing I wanted to say is if mom's not happy, neither is anyone else in the house. So if you notice your child is stressed, it might be because you're stressed. And I could, this is hard to do sometimes. We're getting frustrated with our child, or I can't do my math, or I don't understand. And there's tears, or they're, slumped in the corner, or they don't want to do their stuff. Sometimes it's a reflection of what else is going on in the house and the environment. And I found that in myself when I was stressed and I was feeling like I got up late, oh, we're behind or whatever. I transferred that to my kids. And when, I found them stressed, not all cases, but this might be one of the things that's causing the stress. And so I had to take a good look at myself. And one of the things I learned was I did so much better if I put my alarm on so that I was up half an hour to an hour before my kids. And, when I first started doing this, I was like, I just wanted to turn off the alarm and go back to sleep. But I realized that my day was so much better when I had some personal time to myself where I could get up, get myself together. I often would go for a walk. I would do a little bit of devotions, Bible study on my own, and get breakfast started. And then my kids got up, and that changed my day so much because I just had some headspace for myself. So moms, if you're finding your kids stressed, it might be because you yourself are stressed. So it might require changing something in your environment to help you bring your stress down.
Good. That's good. Yeah. And that's always the hardest thing to do, but it is important to start with yourself. It's all related to that self-care thing. You have to take care of yourself before you can care for others. But some of you might have seen this title or started listening and thought, my kids are stressed. What? They're kids. They have everything done for them. What's there to be stressed out about? And I can say, I've heard my parents saying that, when I was younger. But I want to take a step back. I want us all to take a step back and try to bring yourself back to when you were a kid, or put yourself in your children's shoes, and realize that, of course, because we are homeschoolers, we are not only educators, but we're parents. And we need to remember that we have both of those roles. Now, I believe we do. Anyway, even if we're not home educating, that we're still our kids' teachers. But if you have officially taken on the role of a home educator, there are two. You have the parenting and the educator role that we're filling. So as a parent, let's step back away from the teacher for a moment and get in the parent shoes. And our kids are young. There are situations that they will come up that for us are, just second nature. How to handle, a phone bill, how to pay a phone bill online, or how to shop at the grocery store, how to clean a toilet. I don't know, like a myriad of things that we take for granted that we know how to do, and we just do it and don't even think about it. All this stuff, depending on your child's age, is new. Everything is new. There's a first time to everything. And this is the age they're doing it. That can be very stressful. When you add on then that they're learning things, that's a secondary stress. Okay. So they've got stuff in their personal life, in their home life, maybe in the community, if you're out volunteering, all these situations and environments that will be a first time for them, and feeling intimidated perhaps because they know they're younger. They know that other people don't assume that they can navigate this. And so they feel, they second guess themselves. That translates over as well to the academics. So it's very possible, and depending how sensitive your child is too, that they may really be feeling all this, in a hyper sense. That's a lot of stress. And so before we just say, oh, they're doing it, they've got everything done for them. They're just kids. What's life to them? I know my college student right now, or my recent college graduate, is feeling very stressed out because he's finished his degree, but now he's got to figure out grad school. He's got to figure out a job because he doesn't have enough education to get the job in his field yet. Uh, they're looking for another apartment. I mean, there's a lot going on that I would just say, well, it's stressful, but we'll handle it. But for him, it's all the first time he's doing. So it's important for us to realize that our kids, and especially when they're young, this is everything that they're doing is there's the first time, and that's stressful. And so just to be aware of that, I think can help us, give us some compassion and help them to deal with it. Just sit down, keep conversations open, keep your sense of humor alive, because that will help a lot. Not that you're laughing at them, but you know how to make them laugh and help them to just uh, be able to remove the tension from the stress, and just realize these are just things. This is part of the learning process, and let's make it, look at it as an adventure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
The thing I was thinking about was, if you're finding your child stress, like over, you know, some days, are go better than others. We all know
Sure.
that we have the ups and downs.
Yep.
But if you find your child seems consistently like their attitude's off, they seem frustrated, they have tears or anger, one of the best things to do is to just observe them and think, okay, what is it that they're doing right now that's putting them in this, and what happened just before this?
Hmm.
So it's backing up what happened just before. And that might give you some clues about what's actually causing the stress. And then the other thing is, how much sleep did they get the previous
Hmm.
night? When's the last time they had something to eat? Because I could see that in my kids, they're working through the morning or whatever, they had their breakfast or whatever, but they're having trouble concentrating, and they're not really sure why. And sometimes all they needed was, they were dehydrated. So they needed some water and they needed a snack. And instead of pushing through, let's just get this done, I had to back up and go, you know what? The time's really gone by. They ate early this morning. That's what it is. It
Hmm.
might just be as simple as need some food and water.
And
But
it's important to verbalize that too, so that they understand, say, hey, you seem like you're having a hard time. Let's take a break and eat something, because we all need to be refueled, because that'll help them start to recognize in themselves too, that, oh, this is a possibility. So maybe this isn't really stress. It's just low blood sugar. I need a snack.
yeah, and one of the things we noticed with one of my daughters is, when we thought, what did they eat and how long ago, it turned out she would have a reaction to red food dye.
Hmm.
This really caused her anxiety or something. And talking with the doctor, he said, oh yeah, a lot of kids have trouble with the red food dye.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, it could have been in a popsicle, it could have been in like, a lollipop, I don't know. But it was something I was like, really? And then I did notice that if she had had something that had the red coloring in it, it seemed to make her more agitated with her work. So we just removed it.
Hmm.
So again, not everything's that simple, but sometimes it is,
Right.
so
And it's important to be able to realize what it isn't. That's as
Mhm.
important as realizing what it is. And yeah,
Mhm.
food allergies are especially in younger kids, are really a big thing. I had 4 cousins; they were all allergic to red dye number 2. They would go, yeah, pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
So that is, you never know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
The other thing, and this is something to bring up to your kids when they are not stressed, do this when you're having a snack or you're sitting in the yard or whatever and just relaxing with your family. But to talk about the different kinds of stress, because we always have stress. And there's good stress and there's bad stress. Good stress gets us out of a potentially dangerous situation, and and is a self-preserving kind of thing. Bad stress is, when we have too much going on, and it wears our body, and it wears our emotions and leaves us frazzled and tired and disgruntled, and all the different ways that we express stress. But, sometimes we will have days when there's a lot to do. We have a full calendar. Um, that could be good stress. You wouldn't want that on a regular basis, because then it would become bad stress. But it's important to talk to your kids about the different kind of stresses, so that they start, and this will help you too, but so they start recognizing, okay, I'm feeling really stressed out right now, but I just need to get this done. And, we do have a lot to do today. We can do it, and we'll get through. And then that's actually helps to foster a sense of satisfaction and empowerment. And gee, I can do things. I can get through this kind of thing. So there are times when stress is a good thing, and it's beneficial, and your kids and you can learn from it. And then there are times to recognize, no, this is getting unhealthy. Maybe we need counseling. Maybe we need to just change up our lifestyle, what we're doing right now. Maybe we need to get out of some situation that we're in. And those are things that, as your kids get older, you'll be able to have a richer conversation about them. But even as they're young, just help them to start, even if it's just, this is good stress, this is bad stress, just make it basic like that. But to start those conversations, and that can be, that's an open-ended conversation. It's a lifelong teaching, really, and learning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Um, while you were speaking, it was making me think that um, just the fact of taking a look at, oh, I'm feeling stressed, like just recognizing that it's
Mhm.
there is such a start to say, okay,
Absolutely.
why? And I was thinking, like, as I was talking about earlier, about how in the mornings I needed some headspace on my
Mhm.
own. One of the things that we always had every single day was what like to call scheduled downtime, which was where my kids were not doing academics, and they weren't allowed on any screens or anything, but they had usually a couple hours each day where they could just do whatever they wanted. And
Mhm.
oftentimes it was outdoors, but it could be reading a book, it could be, painting a picture, it could be my son, coming up with some design or something. But they knew every day that they had this open window
Mhm.
that they could just be. And I found that really, really brought the stress level down in our house. And before I had implemented that, I myself am an extrovert, and both of my daughters are as well. Or, well, my middle daughter's kind of on the fence. Sometimes she's extrovert, so she's kind of on. But we liked the busyness and we liked all the activities. But my son, that would stress him out. And so when we had this scheduled downtime, he knew that he had that time each day, that, you're doing this, you're doing that, but he had that window. And and I found for myself, even as an extrovert doing all that stuff, I had that window of time as well, that I could just, get my brain back together and, okay, they're doing that. So maybe I'll have a cup of tea and sit for
Mhm.
15 minutes and read, a book or whatever, and just put that in my day. And it brought a lot more joy in
Mm.
life, and my kids joy too, because they knew every day that they had that window of time.
Very good. That's good. Yeah. That's good. I'll tell you the one thing definitely not to do handling your kids' stress is to minimize it or encourage them to brush it aside. Probably the worst thing you could say to your kid, "Oh, you're not stressed," or just cut it out. Or just to somehow encourage them to not examine what's going on. Anything that minimizes it, or it's a very uh, unhealthy, talking about mental health kind of thing. It's a very unhealthy comment to make, and it's very unhealthy for their mental health as well.
Mhm.
Take them seriously, even if you both end up laughing about it afterwards. Once you've analyzed it and looked at it and had a snack or whatever you need to do, uh, don't don't minimize it. To take their concerns and their worries and their anxiety, take it seriously,
Mhm.
and let them know that you are, and deal with it, because it's real. It's, even if it seems silly to you, it's real to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I know as my kids were getting ready for higher education, we had done some standardized testing in that with them, which
Mhm.
was timed, which is not something they were used to. But I was saying, like,
Right.
hey, no, we're going to use a timer because we want it to seem, simulate how you would be. And they were like, oh, this is like looking at the clock. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let's just back off for a minute. Yes, we're going to do it timed. Are you going to finish all the questions? Probably not. Are you going to feel a bit rushed? Maybe. But the first time we do this, it's going to feel like this. You're going to feel the pressure. You're not going to finish all the questions. So what?
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to do it another time and we're going to do it again. So it was sort of like bringing the expectation down, like, okay, yeah, you probably won't finish all the questions. Big deal. Like the whole point is just to get used to a timed,
Right.
exam. And then taking that a step further, I know one of my daughters would get really anxious in university before an exam.
Mm-hmm.
And so what she would call sometimes and ask for prayer because she was feeling really nervous. She's trying to stay and she's nervous. And I'm like, okay, have you put in the time going to class? And she would say yes. And then I'd say, okay, have you put in the time, reading what you needed to read? Yes. Have you put in the time doing the assignments? She said yes. I said, so you have done everything in your power that you could do to be ready for the exam? And she'd go, yeah. And I go, so it doesn't matter how you do on the exam. And she'd go, what? And I go, because you can't control that. You can only control what you did, and you put everything in place. So now, even if you fail the exam, it doesn't matter. You did your part and you did your best. So it doesn't matter. And then she'd go, oh, okay. And invariably she'd do fine on the exam.
Right.
But it was, again, putting what can you control and what can't you control, and recognizing those two things, what's in your control and what you can't. So you got to let it go.
Right. That's a great example too of you taking her anxiety seriously and then working through it and giving her tools to overcome it, so there are things that we can do. One thing that came to mind to me too, one of our kids hated public speaking, didn't want to do any kind of public speaking. And he was but he was like that president. He had a leadership role in one of the homeschool groups that we were in. And it required him to get up and talk to people, and they were his friends mostly, but still it was a different situation, but he had to get up in front of them and talk to them to lead the meetings. And then at the end of the year at the parents meeting, well, this terrified him, the concept of doing that. So we started doing book reports at home, and all the kids did it, and we gave them to each other. You know what I mean? So everybody would take turns getting up, and we'd all be sitting on the couch or on chairs or however around the kitchen table at different places, different times. And they would do their book report out loud to an audience. So it became just a different environment of doing what they had been doing all the time at home. And it wasn't so stressful. It wasn't so anxiety producing, because it was just another time to do what they'd been doing all along. So that was also giving him a tool to overcome a potentially stressful situation, or a situation that was causing him stress, but didn't have to really.
Yeah, because you were just doing that first step, getting to do it at home. It's funny because I taught a public speaking course to a group of homeschoolers, and it was public speaking through games.
Oh.
And so one of the things I did is I'd get them up. And again, there were a lot of people have trouble with public speaking.
Absolutely.
I mean, they say it's one of the most prevalent fears that people have. So one of the things we did, similar to that getting up, is we'd get them up and they'd have like a paragraph or something that they had written, but what they'd get to do is pick from a little bag, and it would come out, and they'd pick it out, a little thing out, and they'd open it and say sad or happy or excited. And they had to read their thing in whatever that emotion was. So it became hilarious. So, they're pretending crying, and they'd all get into it, right?
Oh,
so they'd be like, oh, I wonder which one I'm going to get. So it became a game rather than, oh, everybody's going to think I'm all nervous. So everybody sort of got into it. So it was kind of like over time, they just got more and more comfortable because it was all done in fun. So it's another little way to help with
great. That's great.
That stress that can be a huge stress, the public speaking.
Yeah, that's true. So the last thing I had just was that if you find if you're stepping back and observing your kids, as Tracy mentioned earlier, suggested earlier, and you are noticing that stress, tension, anxiety is kind of the go-to response for your child. There could be a myriad of reasons that, certainly we don't know, and you might not even know things that have happened. Just because we homeschool doesn't mean we are literally with our kids 24/7. They do have time with friends, that maybe they have a job and they're outside of the home. Maybe they're in a social activity, karate, group swim lessons, whatever. They are with other people, that they're not always with us. We don't see everything. And there may be things that have happened that we don't know about. So, the last thing, and I don't really want to say this last because there's any stigma to this, but there often is. But don't be afraid to seek counseling for your children. If there is something that you and they aren't seeming to work out for some reason, and they are, as I mentioned, that's their go-to response, is to be very stressed out or anxious or worried about something. There may be something going on that for some reason, they might not feel comfortable talking to you about, and that's okay. The only caveat I would have with that is to make sure that you know who they are talking to. In other words, you talk to a counselor first. You make sure they have a worldview, whether that you are comfortable with, that corresponds or backs up your family's worldview. You want to know who's speaking into your children's life, but don't be afraid to do that. There's no stigma, there's no shame in needing counseling. And sometimes having a third party is really just the easiest, best way to do it, because there's no baggage there.
Mhm.
So that's the last thing that I really wanted to share, to encourage you that it's okay to do that. And certainly these COVID and even these post-COVID times right now, there's a lot of stress. There's more than enough stress to go around.
Yeah. And things like ADHD can cause anxiety and stress. And
Mhm.
it's not always apparent where the frustration or that is coming from. So there
Right.
might, if you see it consistently in your child, that they seem consistently stressed or anxious, that's another thing to speak to the doctor about.
Mhm.
There are some learning disabilities, and that they could be like high functioning, and you aren't aware that there's an underlying difficulty that they're having.
Right.
We have another episode, episode 34, and it's about if the critical link between retained primitive reflexes and a child's ability to learn. And that's an awesome episode if you're seeing consistent stressors in your child, where things that you think, my other kids find that easy, but this particular child finds it difficult. That episode might help you as well, sort of highlight what might actually be going on. I
Mhm.
had a couple other things I wanted to add.
Mhm.
Some of the ways to combat stress is little something that was really popular for a while were called fidget spinners. Which sounds silly, but I know with one of my children, if she had one of those in her hand while she was doing something, that helped.
Mhm.
Or some kids find it helpful to just listen to music in the background, and it can be music with or without lyrics.
Mhm.
If they're distracted with the lyrics, then just some nice music, often they say classical music in the background, can have quite a calming effect. So that's another little thing that you could try. Also, getting your kids up and stretching so they're not sitting for
Mhm.
hours on end. Just, every half hour or whatever, get up, 5 minute stretch, get a drink of water, walk around. Um, uh, you know, that's a really good thing to do, just to
Yeah.
keep them moving.
Mhm.
And one other thing I mentioned, sometimes kids are not ready when they get up in the morning to just get into it. You might want to have breakfast and go for a 45-minute walk or half-hour walk, just to get them. Kids like to move. It's their gross motor skills are really important as they're growing and developing. So sometimes starting the day with that is much better than just getting into the academics. So that might help your situation as well. So those are just a few tips and tricks of things that worked in our family that might help you out as well.
Mhm. Yep. So take it seriously. Don't necessarily take responsibility for it, but teach your kids how to own it, and take responsibility for themselves, and help them develop tools to do that. And it might be beneficial for you too, Mom. Who knows? We have to. We're all human. Stress is not. Nobody's exempt from stress, but as I mentioned, there's good stress and bad stress. It's just learning how to recognize it and then deal with it for yourself.
And the last thing I wanted to mention is, as your kids, especially teens, they become more aware of themselves. So asking them the question like, okay, you're stressed right now. What do you think would help?
Right.
And oftentimes they're able to go back to like, I'd say to them, what's another situation that you were in that you were stressed and how did you get out of it? And so helping them find their own solution will, instead of you saying, well, do this, a lot of times with teens, when they're help, sort of guide them to their own solution, it often is more effective. So that may help too.
I would just say it is more effective because first of all, a teen's going to be could be potentially be very resistant to something that you are telling them to do at that age, which is natural and normal. They're trying to find their own way, and that you will always be around to help them, even if you know the exact thing that will work, the perfect solution. You won't always be around. So if they can't bring that up for themselves, you're not really helping them in the long haul. So yeah. All right. So just, we will be praying for you and wishing you well if you find stress, that your child is feeling stressed, and hopefully that you've gleaned some tools and some methods that you can use or adapt in your homeschooling. If you have other ones too as well that you have used in your homeschool that works, we would love to hear from you. You can leave us a message at on SpeakPipe, and I'll have the link to that in the show notes. We always love to hear from our listeners, of course. And yeah, so anyway, so you have a great week. Thank you.
Remember, you can homeschool and it can be absolutely fabulous.
That's right. All right. Y'all have a great week. Bye-bye.